Omajana Tiram Mandrastra Jnana Saka Salakaya Chaksho Umitandrena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Mano Vishwam Swapidamyana Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadatista Padantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Padamam Sri Guru Vaishnavam Sa Sri Rupam Savajatam Sahagana Raguna Sajivam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Saha Gana Lalita Shri Shankavitamscha Hey Krishna Karina Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tacha Kante Nagorange Radha Vrindavaneshwari Vishnu Vanu Sukadevi Pranay Mami Hari Priye Vanjakopa Dhruva Kripa Sindhuve Vacha Paditanam Panabhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Go Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
So we do chapter 5,
Chapter 5.
verse 29. There's 241 in that edition, one Pradeep's got.
29.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah.
Bhaktiram Yoga Tapasam Savaloka Maheshwaram Survasara Bhutanam Jakpanam Chirichiti.
I was about to say, who wants to say it, Pradeep's?
29.
For chapter 5, 29. Do you want me to get it for you? I should have brought both my editions. What page is that, Steve?
305 and 1, one's different words.
So this is chapter 5, verse 29.
Christy, do you want to? I'll find it. Yes, you got that.
Yeah, oh, okay.
So you just, yeah. So do you want to read it out, Christy?
Bhog Taram Yajna Tapasam Sarva Loka Maheshwaram Surdham Sarva Bhutanam Janatva Mam Santem Rejati.
Wonderful. Steve, do you want to do the translation?
A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifice and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries.
Pradeep, do you want to read out the commentary?
The conditioned souls within the clutches of the illusionary energy are all anxious to attain peace in the material world, but they do not know the formula for peace, which is explained in this part of the Bhagavad Gita. The greatest peace formula is simply this: Lord Krishna is the beneficiary in all human activities. Men should offer everything to the transcendental service of the Lord, because he is the proprietor of all the planets and demigods thereon. No one is greater than he. He is greater than the greatest of demigods, Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. In the Vedas, Sarva Upanishad 6.7, the Supreme Lord is described as Tam Ishvaram Param Maheshwaram. Under the spell of illusion, living entities are trying to be lords of all they survey, but actually they are dominated by the material energies of the Lord. The Lord is the master of the material nature and the unconditioned souls. are under the stringent rules of material nature. Unless one understands these bare facts, it is not impossible to achieve peace in the world, either individually or collectively. This is the sense of Krishna consciousness. Lord Krishna is the supreme predominator, and all living entities, including the great demigods, are his subordinates. One can attain perfect peace only in complete Krishna consciousness. This 5th chapter is a practical explanation of Krishna consciousness, generally known as Karma Yoga. The question of mental speculation as to how Karma Yoga can give liberation is answered herewith. To work in Krishna consciousness is to work with the complete knowledge of the Lord as the predominator. Such work is not different from transcendental knowledge. Direct Krishna consciousness is Bhakti Yoga, and Jnana Yoga is a path leading to Bhakti Yoga. Krishna consciousness means to work in full knowledge of one's relationship with Supreme Absolute, and the perfection of this consciousness is full knowledge of Krishna, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A pure soul is eternal servant of God as his fragmental part and parcel. He comes into contact with Maya, illusion, due to the desire to lord it over Maya, and that is the cause of his many sufferings. As long as he is in contact with the matter, he has to execute work in terms of material necessities. Krishna consciousness, however, brings one into spiritual life, even while one is within the jurisdiction of matter, for it is an arousing of spiritual existence by practice in the material world. The more one is advanced, the more he is freed from the clutches of matter. The Lord is not partial towards anyone. Everything depends on one's practical performance of duties in Krishna consciousness, which in every respect helps one control the senses and conquer the influence of desire and anger. And one who stands fast in Krishna consciousness, controlling the above-mentioned passions, remains factually in the transcendental stage, or Brahma Nirvana. The eightfold yoga mysticism is automatically practiced in Krishna consciousness because the ultimate purpose is served. There is a gradual process of elevation in the practice of yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharanya, and dhanya, and samadhi. But these only profess perfection by devotional service, which alone can award peace to the human being. It is the highest perfection of life. Thus, this ends the Bhaktivedanta purports for the 5th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of Karma Yoga, or action in Krishna consciousness.
Excellent, wonderful. Okay, so I'll break this down a bit because it's probably quite a lot of information. So normally at the end of each chapter, especially the last commentary, is a summary of the whole chapter. So probably one of the best ways to get an understanding of the book is to read all those conclusions of each chapter first, then read the book, because then you get exactly what the point of each chapter is. It's the same thing, you might get lost in the book early on. So if we go to the first sentence, conditioned souls of the commentary. So conditioned souls within the clutches of the illusory energy are all anxious to attain peace in the material world, but they do not know the formula for peace which is explained in this part of the Bhagavad Gita. Okay. So the first thing we have to grasp is, why does the material world exist? Maybe by now we can have some understanding of that. So, Shrishti, why does the material world exist?
Because we have been naughty and he was sending us. That was the first time he told us that we were the naughty. We were servant of God, but eventually he wanted to enjoy some sense. So God said no, and he again insisted. So he's like a father. He said, okay, fine, you do it. But energy, that's what I think.
Yeah, very good, yeah. Steve, you
That's
added
what
it?
you told us.
So that's a good answer, so that's 60%. Anything else you want to add? Want to add anything? Right, so this is the detention centre. We're in the detention centre, right? Well, it's an unusual detention centre. So there's two purposes. The two purposes are, you're right, that's exactly why we've got here. And the purposes are to reform our conduct, to refine our intentions. Yeah? So the moment we want to enjoy for ourselves, and we'll refine those intentions to enjoy for Krishna. Yeah? And that's going to change our behaviour from selfish, enjoy for ourselves, to enjoy for Krishna. So we're going from pleasure taker to pleasure giver for the Lord. Yeah? That's the purpose. So it's like a very special detention centre, but it's also like a game. So if you imagine that we turn this room into, you know, let's say the local school down the road in Prospect, all the naughty kids come here at 6 p.m. On Wednesday evening. And they come in through the doors, they sit down, that's 1 hour of detention, right? But this is a special creative kind of detention, right? Because every kid will have a different personality, obviously, and different reasons why they're being naughty in class. Okay? Some because of their parents, some because they've watched too much iPads, some too much Red Bull. Some parents give them Red Bull and crisps in the morning, and chocolate. So what they've got to do is they've got to use everything in this room somehow for Krishna, right? So this is the detention centre, this is the material world. So one of them might, there's a big piece of cardboard on the back, you can see that. So one of them might take that big piece of cardboard and cut out a picture of Krishna. Another one might start building bits of Vrindavan and all that to do plastics. Another one might start using that piano over there to sing some tunes about Krishna. Another one over here might do a little play over here. So there might be something in this room that any one of those, let's say there's 12 kids, can use for Krishna. So they come in, and part of their reformation is to use something in this room, in some ways, link it back to God. Okay? Yoga means linking back to God. Okay? So karma yoga means actions that link back to God. So by carrying out this kind of detention framework, they're now going to be focused on getting their conduct and intentions correct. Okay? So that's the purpose of the material world. So the Lord doesn't say, well, those souls that are misbehaving, I'm going to annihilate them. Right? No, he's saying I'm going to take them under a process of reformation so they can go back to the classroom. That's why we're here. That's really the only purpose of our existence, is to go back to linking ourselves to the divine in service. So now this is difficult depending on the kid. Rishishti works with kids. So some of the kids that come to detention, they're just going to turn around and face the wall. And go, I don't want to get involved. I don't care. I'll keep coming to detention every week. You know, that sort of attitude, right? And the teacher, this kind of spiritual master or devotee like yourselves, might go, come on now. Or they might go, come on, give you a bit of cake, you know, a bit of prasadam. Come on, we'll carry out an evening activity for you and try and cajole you. But these devotees, these teachers in this detention centre are very, very kind because they're trying to constantly get you back to playing with everyone else firstly, playing nicely, starting to build things for Krishna, so then you're ready to tick off the list and go back to the classroom. Okay? So that's what we're trying to do here. And occasionally, when I've taught, by Krishna's mercy, I've ended up teaching martial arts to special needs kids. And I know what it's like, because if you're talking to one of them, they just start running off into a different direction, deliberately to wind you up to see how you react. And they'll go and climb up something, or they'll chase each other around the room. Then after 10 minutes, they'll get bored and they'll come back. And then you can do one little bit more, another 3 minutes, and then it's another 20 minutes of messing around. And it's a gradual process, right? And for us, it's a gradual process because if we suddenly all became 8 years old right now, that's the way Krishna would see us right now. Okay? We sort of listen for a bit, and then we kind of go, let's try and climb out the window, let's try and do something over there, let's do the headstand on the back, let me go and eat that guy's lunch when he's not looking, whatever. This is all the stuff that's happening in the material world. So Krishna doesn't take it that seriously in the end. Sometimes someone's really naughty, he's got to punish them and put them into a harder detention centre. So there could be a smaller room with less play tools, more horrible exercises next door, and we can call that detention centre the hell detention centre, right? So they might go in there for half an hour, it's a bit horrible, and come back to this one. Right? So that's the way to look at the material world. It's here for our reformation. But that's, once you realise why we're here, so let's say out of the 12 kids, there's one kid who goes, do you know what? So I'm just supposed to sort of behave myself in a particular way and I'll be out of here. Right? So the penny drops with that child, right? So that child then engaged with a huge level of enthusiasm. Go, well, I don't want to come every week to this thing. I want to like go back to the classroom and play around outside of everyone else. So he'll be like, okay, well, you know, I'll do what the teacher wants. I'll go and build something for Krishna over there. I'll do this over here, right? And he'll be very receptive to actively start doing stuff. So that's where we are as devotees. We're now actively getting ourselves out of the detention center. So that's why devotees are also very special. Because the last few weeks in different situations I've had criticisms of other devotees. But if you think about all the millions of people, imagine there's thousands of these detention centers around Australia, thousands in America and other countries, right? The devotees are very special because there's kids that kind of are making the effort to get out of here, right? So they might occasionally have a 5-minute lapse where they slap the other kid across the face. But the teacher will go, look, you're doing so well, okay, you've fallen down a little bit. Your slap might be going to the booze room or going to a brothel or something, I don't know. But generally the behaviour is okay, it's heading in the right direction. Krishna's going to go, okay, well, you know, spend a little bit more time. Maybe I'll add an extra teacher in to go and give them a bit of help to get that kid out, you know, which is another devotee, or suddenly you get something else you can go to kind of accelerate your way out of here. So Krishna will send people, because imagine he's got a CCTV, he's in your heart as a CCTV. He's looking into the detention room and he's going, okay, well that kid need help because they're probably going to get out of here. They've probably got a couple more detentions left. Right? So he's very aware of what we need by just observing our behaviour constantly. You know? And that very simple analogy brings to bear everything that's going on in the material world. So those kids that are really putting an effort in, like Pradeep or yourselves, or I'm trying to put an effort in, you know, we're on a way out of here. Right? We're trying to, yeah, so they're very, very special. Now, they could be a temple president who has a mood swing, or somebody who occasionally just have a good way of dealing with the other kids. But it's part of the naughtiness, right? Right? You just got a different kind of naughtiness that you can't see, or you might have been more reformed. You might have spent more time in detention centres in your previous lives than you realise. So you might go, well, that guy's a temple president or on GBC and he's doing stuff like that, but I'm not. Why is he so advanced, whatever? It doesn't matter what other kids think they are, whether they're advanced or not. It depends on whether the supervisors or the headmaster thinks they're advanced. Right? So if these kids go, oh, those kids are doing really well, oh, those kids are not doing so well, it doesn't matter. It's the guy watching the CCTV, his view that really counts. Right? So you've got to have this point of like, okay, I don't really know what Krishna's plan is with somebody. Maybe they're having a bad day or a bad week or a bad life, which is 0 time in the spiritual world, right? It's what, 1 second, not even 1 second. So you can't judge them, you know. And I think that in this call, if we have a little bit more of a give, a much bigger give, we have to have a much bigger give than we do in day-to-day situations, day-to-day life. You know, day-to-day, go away, whatever. You know. As devotees, in the devotional community, you have to have a lot of give and take because you understand through this knowledge, there's a lot of baggage people are bringing in, right, of mischief. Maybe he's also having a Red Bull for breakfast, 6 chocolate bars, and his parents are putting him on an iPad for 4 hours in the morning. He hasn't slept at night, you know, and occasionally he drinks lager out of his dad's fridge, and he's only 9 years old. We don't know what this kid is doing, okay? We don't know what this person in the material world has been up to, right? So we have to kind of, you know, we don't know everyone's history in this kind. We don't know what, you know, devotee might try and put their best behaviour on, and you might think that's appalling, but that, for them, that's their best behaviour. So you have to have that huge amount of compassion, a huge amount of tolerance, you know, towards this type of thing. And that becomes the spirit and the vision of the Vaishnava. That's the spirit of knowledge, of jnana yoga, you know, we're learning this. And the more we see that, the more we'll try and reform our own conduct, you know, in a gentle and caring way, you know. And Krishna will see that and he will give you assistance to purify yourself quicker. Because you'll see you're starting to have a spiritual vision. Where's the plant or an elephant or a dog? You know, in Bhagavad Gita, you know, 5.18, I think it is. See with the same eye, man on earth, heap of gold, a cow, a sage, a dog. You know, once you start seeing that these are all very, very naughty children, you know, some of them are just coming into the detention center standing like a tree. Some of them are barking around like a dog. These are all conditionings. They're actually spiritual entities who are playing full of bliss and knowledge in the spiritual world. They all come into the detention center and play in different roles. One is being a tiger because of his habits. And that's what we've got. We've got a sort of mental case of different things going on. So, you know, I think particularly where you've got a community like Adelaide, which is a very small devotional community with the temple, I think that's definitely something that's really, the more you think about these things, the more you'll start mentioning them to other people, and then before you know it, you've got a change of environment in Adelaide, where people are much more like, I now understand the text a bit more, I know that this person's got analysis from previous lives, I've got analysis, I've got to give and take, I'm not perfect, you know. One of the easiest things to do that is start to really grasp, you know, I was getting some t-shirts made for myself actually saying the world's most fallen devotee. So I put them on in the morning, I might have 5 of them, and go, okay, that's my position. Now, what's everyone else's position? You know? And one of the things I was really touched by, I think it was a Swami, it's gone for 40 years, he was going to a meeting with somebody who'd been in the movement for a year or two, and his attitude was, I'm going to this private meeting with this person. I don't know what they want, do they want to make a donation or whatever, but his attitude was immediately, what can I learn from this person? And the reason he's able to do that as a Swami is because he really understands his own position. He shouldn't be in the material world. Right? Even though he's a Swami formally, so amongst these kids he's a prefect, he actually really understands that he's a bit naughty. He's got that spiritual knowledge. So he goes, okay, what is that kid doing over there that might be pleasing Krishna? What's he doing with that cardboard? What's this one doing over here with those 2 other kids that I can learn from? And then the supervisor that's monitoring, the master that's monitoring goes, oh, that kid's also trying to learn from all the other kids. He saw that kid was being praised for something, and he wants to make that a part of his personality. So there's a lot of information out there. You might think, oh, this devotee is horrible, but he's in the devotional movement. Prabhupada, as the Gita says in 9.30, he must have some saintly qualities to come towards Krishna. So what are those? What are those saintly things I can learn from? You know, the Prabhupada example was, when you look at the moon, you see how beautiful it is. You don't go, well, look, there's a crater there, that's what a meteor smashed against it, there's a bit of a dent on the moon there. No, you go, well, that's beautiful. You have to start looking at life like that. Right? What's the best things? Krishna's seeing the best of us. He's seeing the best things of us, and he's helping us to get rid of those negative things by pulling out the best things in us. By Krishna's own mercy, we're getting that. You know? So, why there's a lot of stuff about chanting, which goes, the really most effective chanting is when you do a 2 or 3 minute deliberation on, I'm so lucky to be given the opportunity to chant the holy names in the morning. Wow, so many bursts I could have had, I would not got this opportunity. Now I'm really finding my reals. This is my first beginning of my way out of the material world. What a blessing. It's only by Krishna's mercy and the mercy of devotees you're getting that. So that's like, if you think winning the lottery is a lot for materialists, that's like winning the lottery 10 trillion times. Because you never have to play the lottery once you're out of here. Right? You don't have to think about playing the lottery because you want to be in the spiritual world. So it's like chanting every day is like winning the lottery every single day, every morning. You know, it's you're transcending the material problems. It may be a little bit difficult because you might think, oh well, what if I don't do any work, or if I don't deal with my clients, or this or that, or make a phone call, or deal with the heating, or whatever material problem there is, right? And then you get to a point where you say, it's quite lucky this week, I got a couple of kicks in the face. That's Krishna reminding me, you're not supposed to be in the material world. Don't get too comfortable. You're only here to use everything around you to come back to me. That's the only purpose of you being here. Right? So it doesn't matter if you're, I don't know, washing a car, you live next to a desert, and that car is going to be something to pick up some very elevated devotees, so you want it to be cleaned. It's a bit frustrating because it's always getting dirty because of the desert winds. If you're doing it for Krishna, if you're using your hand, which is material energy, and your energy of the body, and you're using that car for Krishna, that's bhakti. You know? That's what you're supposed to be doing. Because when you get in the spiritual world, you're going to know how to behave. Okay? So that's our first bit. Any questions on that? I always kill analogies by overdoing it. Trying to add more stuff into my detections and so Krishna is a beneficiary of all human activities. Men should offer everything to transcendental service to the Lord, okay? Because he's the proprietor of all planets and demigods. So last week that's the second sentence. Okay, we're looking for it again. So last week we moved on this idea that Iswara Rasa was a principle. is, this doesn't belong to me, So when the naughty kids come in a detention centre, what do kids do when they're innocent? They start touching things as if they own them, right? They'll start pressing that sanitizer, they'll start pulling that down. Without even, just let them run in it, they'll start touching things. Adults won't, they'll go, okay, maybe I'm not allowed to, or whatever. But kids don't have that revelation. So we're like that. We're touching everything in the material world as if it's ours, like little kids. And we've got to go, hang on a minute, why am I using this? I'm touching Krishna's, this is something that belongs to Krishna. Why am I touching this? If I'm going into OTR and I've filled my car up, and I've got plenty of food at the house, why am I having a sandwich? Do I need to eat a sandwich? It's Krishna's material energy, why do I need to consume this? If I've got enough food, if I'm starving, different, I need food so I can do service. If I'm not starving, I'm overeating. Like I'm taking Krishna's energy for myself, my own pleasure. That's not allowed. That results in karmic reaction. So this is very difficult, as I've said so many times, because the whole consumer society we live in is making us, it wants us to enjoy for ourselves, so it can turn us into something that generates money for people. And as we know, we've had time and time again from ISKCON gurus, people only vote for people who will give them more sense gratification, will bind them more on the material world, right? So we're really up against it. This is why I think it's important to be with other devotees as much as possible. Because otherwise, your only option is you by nature you will want to play with other people. Everyone in the spiritual world wants to play with other people. It's our nature as such. No one in the spiritual world is hanging around their own in some corner, right? It doesn't happen. So we'll just associate with the consumers of the material world, the takers, the pleasure takers. And that will bring those bad habits back on us that we've just conditioned ourselves. So the best way to think about it is, let's say we've got 8 of the kids out of the 12 to behave properly in the detention centre, and we change the ratio. We add 20 naughty kids into the detention centre, right? The behaviour of the bad kids is probably going to start changing to accommodate those kids, right? So that's what we end up doing with bad association. So we'll be very careful how we associate stuff. As you go on in Bhakti, you realise, why am I suddenly thinking like in duality of the material world? Oh, I've just had a conversation with somebody who's very materialistic. Like one conversation, you'll immediately see the impact, and you'll go, and then what you'll do is you go, okay, I don't want to talk to that person every day. I'll talk to them once a week because I have to because of work or whatever it is. And you'll minimise the exposure. As you're minimising your exposure, hanging around with more devotees, your life is getting purified. So it's a process, but you've got to be on it. You can't just leave it drift. It's a proactive process. It's not, oh, Krishna help me, but you've got to do something as well. You've got to do your 50%, right? So that's association. So he's greater than the greatest of the demigods, or Shiva and Lord Brahma. Now, one of the mind-blowing things about Prabhupada's theology is that even demigods are not necessarily as elevated as devotees. Okay? Because what they've done, what a demigod has done is, in terms of karma, anyone want to predict?
They've done good karma.
Yes. And so why are they not as elevated as devotees often?
They're materialistic, something?
Yes, material karma is material, yes.
Yeah.
So I'm doing something good for something in return, something materialistic in return, not something spiritual in return.
Yeah.
And they've also got a lot of piety, but they've done a lot of pious acts as well. So they've got a very elevated position. But often, like Indra, he's very, very opulent. Very opulent. And so Krishna ends up, as we know in one of the Vrindavan Leelas, that Krishna ends up showing him his real position when he lifts up Govardhan Hill. So mature opulence is dangerous because what it does is it creates a tendency to enjoy the material energy, and that can bind you more and more into the material world. Whereas devotee, that's why devotee doesn't want material opulence, because you know that when you're in this body, you're going to have a huge attraction to being naughty. Yeah, you're going to like being in a detention centre, being naughty, ending up there. So you're going to go, oh, I don't want that. I mean, when your prayers go from make sure I have a nice thing or whatever. You know, people come to Krishna for his wealth, and they're frustrated and whatever. That's chapter 7. But eventually we'll go, Krishna, don't give me too much. Don't give me just give me enough so I can do something for you. I don't want any more than that. I just want to eat and have something. I don't want to kind of, you know, get too lost in material energy. You know, and it's very difficult. It's very difficult if you're carrying a lot of good karma from previous life. It becomes a very lot of challenge, because you almost have to work. You get a lot of wealth, and you have to then find out where you can put it. Krishna consciousness, you know, and you're almost fighting that good karma. You know, sometimes, like, but sometimes you can't do it. You have to take the good karma, which could attract you more to material energy. You know, so you don't have to go above that and see that as a material thing and go, okay, that's not mine. That good karma, actually, the karma itself, which is part of the material world, the rule of the material world, it belongs to Krishna. So that wealth is not mine. And you realize that's just Krishna's, some sort of allowance that Krishna's made for previous conduct. And you detach yourself from it. And then you become this soul that's becoming more and more detached from bodily conceptions. Right? It's like, oh, I live in a big house, I live in a fast car, or whatever. Right? You actually see those as potential impediments to bhakti. Somebody, you know, I went to, last year in Adelaide, I went to like a barbecue kirtan somewhere. I think it was near, it wasn't too far from there. And I met a guy who was obviously interested, goes to the temple and was interested in kirtan. But the first 20 minutes he spoke to me was about his career and how well he was doing. And it was like a barrage of material ego, you know. And I was like, whoa, you know, I had to actually get away from him because I thought this was really bad, like in terms of momentary association. But what can happen is, if that's what he's thinking constantly, it's going to take him a long time to let go of that, because that's becoming his focus of attachment. You know, my house, my car, whatever I'm doing, my job, my salary, my mortgage size. You know, he's attached to material conceptions. You know?
Sorry, I'm just standing on my back.
Yeah, no worries at all.
Sorry.
Yeah. So we've got to be careful. We actually are all very wealthy in so many ways, materialistically. You know, we're not living in a hut in the African savannah with one cucumber tea. We're actually very, very materially opulent. Even if you think you're not Elon Musk or whatever, you are still very materially opulent. You know, you drive a car, you can fuel it up, you can pay for your, you know, you can probably indulge yourself in the supermarket on excess fruit if you want to do, or bread, or get yourself an expensive loaf of bread, right? But then what you have to do is, over time, you have to simplify that, because that's engaging you, it attracts you material energy, so be very careful of that. The material energy is only here to reform you. That's its only purpose. It's not for you to get embedded into it in any way. You know? And that requires a bit of mental discipline. Now, look back on a week and go, you know what, I bought that really ridiculous loaf of bread for $7 from Coles, whatever it is. And that was way over the top. I mean, I don't really need that. You know? And I bought this thing, I didn't really need that thing. Sometimes it's not fancy clothes, sometimes devotees still have that attraction as they're purifying themselves to different odd things in the material world, because of our tendencies from previous lives. So we're going to, as we progress and mature, we'll be very, very careful about those things. Because they will, what you don't want to do is get old, be lying on your deathbed and go, Krishna, let me just think about that wonderful raisin fruit loaf I had. This was 20 years ago. I have every day now as a habit. It's become a luxury habit, and it's something that might keep you in the material world. You know? So, not to start with, no, you progress one step at a time, but as you progress, you sort of iron these little things out. You go, well, that $3, I can get a Prabhupada book and give it to somebody. You know? That's something that I need to work on as well. You know? So, cool. Pretty okay? Yeah. Okay. So that's the bit about the stringent laws of material nature. Yeah, every time you do enjoy for your senses, normally for a normal person there will be a karmic reaction, because that's not the purpose of the material energy. Okay, it's not to enjoy for yourself. There is always a karmic reaction. Now for devotees it's different. If you're on the sincere path of chanting 1 round a day, 5 rounds a day, 20 rounds a day, whatever it is, you're going to kirtans, you're doing bhakti, you're progressively moving out of here, that's going to counteract that karma, especially when you start following the rules very much from the Prabhupada. Okay? So this nicely comes onto this 14 rounds thing we were talking about earlier. Was a group of those 14 rounds. Now, normally whether you do 1 round or 100, that's not going to get you anywhere in Bhakti, okay? What do you mean by that? Yeah. The reason why the 16 rounds and the 4 regulative principles work is because Prabhupada is a great devotee of Krishna, so Krishna will create that concession for people who come to Prabhupada, right? You're getting, that's the mercy you're getting from Prabhupada in disciplic succession, okay? This is a guy that went with $2, whatever it was, on a boat when he was 69, to the middle of some drug-den, horrible place in New York, and created a movement to love Krishna. Really understood that all these souls were entangled in the material world, and he was going to help them, which is the job of a devotee, to pull them out of the material world, right? And once Prabhupada as a pure devotee says, if you do 16 rounds, follow the 4 regulative principles, and you have a spiritual master, you can get out of here. Once Prabhupada says that, Krishna will make it happen because of Prabhupada's pure love, right? So if you deviate from those rules, you're not going to get the benefit of Krishna's love for Prabhupada, okay? So we're actually all, like if you imagine that you're on a terrible, you're on a sea, or you're rowing across the Atlantic Ocean, and it's a terrible weather, and you're about to get killed by a tidal wave, and suddenly this huge tanker comes along, and there's perfect weather in this little gap. Everywhere else in the ocean is a storm. You're in this particular gap that you can row perfectly across the Atlantic. That's Prabhupada's principles, you know? And because Krishna's love for him, this momentary sunlight and perfect weather in the ocean has been created for you to traverse the ocean, right? So if you start going, well, I want to do like a little bit of those principles, not, you're occasionally going to feel the bumps of material energy, even though it's partially the weather may be good now and again, because you're following some of it. But it's a much harder exercise to row, because maybe your left hand is going to get very, very tired, because that part of the boat is in the very bad weather, and your right hand is in good weather because it's doing occasional devotional activity. That's a really tiring way to progress in Bhakti, right? You're much better ways to go, I surrender to Prabhupada, I surrender to those principles, now I can row. And it just becomes really fast. It'll be like, and Krishna will give you muscles you never thought you had. Like you will not be, you'll do things that you will never believe you could do by following those principles. Because the material energy is under Krishna's ultimate supervision, and because of Prabhupada's allowance that Krishna's given to Prabhupada for his love, you're benefiting from that allowance. So you're getting an exemption from the reactions of material energy, right? By this great, 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 great soul. Like as you go on and on, and obviously at the moment I'm writing a book on Prabhupada, as I've said, and the more you think about Prabhupada, you think, it just makes you cry, because you cannot imagine the purity. It's so pure. You know, this kind of ultra vision of seeing every soul as someone lost in the material ocean. No matter how the rest are disregarding him or not coming or misbehaving in his initial lectures, or his compassion was so great, because his understanding of the conditioning of the soul in the material world is so great, he's able to overcome all that, still forgive and bring these people out. You know, that's a very, very special soul. Very special soul. You're getting that benefit. Well, none of us would be here without that. You know? So we'd be like, well, I'd be on my way back to hell, and you guys will have a slower process back home. You know, so we put this lucky, like, accelerated process, and we'd be foolish not to use it. So this idea of like, okay, maybe I'll do a bit of the rules for myself. You'll get there eventually. As Krishna says, even following other religions, millions of births later, you'll get back to me, because you still understand him as God. When you're purified to then approach him. But it's a very long and tiring process. Why would you do that when all you have to do is do 2 more rounds and you get Prabhupada's mercy? Like, it's just, you know, it's like they say to the kids, you know what? If you tidy up after you played in the detention centre before you go home, you won't have to come to detention. If you do it 3 more times, you'll never have to come to detention again. And you're going to go, well, I don't want to tidy up. I've done everything else well, I don't want to tidy up. So you keep coming back. You won't listen to the last bit. You know? So that's our own not combating, not having the intelligence to combat. That's something from many previous births I need to combat. I need to put my mind on that. Yeah? And people who audit their behaviour go faster in Bhakti. Okay, today I did this, today I fell down slightly, I did that, I ate too much chocolate, I did this, or whatever it is. You know? And we all do it, if we were perfect, we wouldn't be here. But it's just a question of the awareness and an action that makes our journey out of it quicker. You know? So that's important. Anything on that? That sometimes creates question.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You said that this material energy, like the loaf of bread or something, but why do these thoughts keep coming into our mind? Like sometimes I feel like, oh, I should be a millionaire. Like, you know, sometimes.
Because your nature, your natural nature, you're here because you're a rebel. You want to rebel against God, that's why you're here. So you're kind of, you're fighting, you're now using your intelligence, you've got a human form, so you've got intelligence, but there's an animal part of you. You might have been I don't know, a deer in your previous life or something, you know? So you've got these animal conditioning, you've got animal propensities, you know? Now we're living in a world, in Kali Yuga at this time, where the entire world is animalistic, you know? So often people say when you follow Prabhupada's principles, that's when you become a human being. The purpose of being a human being is to go back to the spiritual world, to begin your Bhakti life. So you've got this animal tendency saying, what you have to understand is, that's not me, that's my animal tendency, right? It's one important point on that. If you go to chapter 7, verse 4, this is sometimes overlooked, I feel. So that's a 289, that one.
Verse 4.
Yeah, so earth, got it? Okay, just, sometimes people read this verse and kind of just carry on reading. So earth, water, fire, ether, now listen to this. Mind, intelligence and false ego all constitute by separate material energies. Mind, intelligence and false ego. So these are things that Krishna has put here to either to degrade yourself or to elevate yourself. The mind is a construct of material energy, it's not permanent. It's going to finish when the material world finishes. The mind and intelligence. It can only be used, like your socks, which is also material energy, for some benefit to Krishna. Okay? So you decide with the mind whether you're going to fall into these animal propensities and go, I need to start learning to control them. The great thing is now we know from neurology, the mind is like a muscle. The more you practice a habit, the more the habit becomes the regularity, the regular thing you do. So when you see, oh, I'm doing that, I'm eating something I shouldn't be eating, or I'm not getting up, or I'm getting up late, it's your decision to go, this mind and material energy has to be used for Krishna, so I need to discipline myself, because this belongs to Krishna, to make myself do bhakti. And that's the choice. We've got this little bit of free will, you know, to degrade us or to elevate us, you know. And bhakti in itself doesn't stop once it starts. So in the end, you will come over that just by chanting and doing all the other principles. But if you can apply your mind to it, you'll get there faster. You know? Otherwise, you have to chant so many times and do all that stuff, which is all very, very important. But you'll get there a bit slower. You know?
It's very hard sometimes.
Of course it is.
But your mind goes somewhere else. You try to.
Yeah, but you're not the mind. You're not the mind.
It's just very hard.
Yeah, but you're not the mind. You're not.
It's very hard.
Yeah, Krishna just said 7.4. The mind is part of the material world. It's a construct of the material world. You're not the mind. You're not the lungs. You're not the heart. You're not the air you're breathing. You're not these things.
The only problem is like if you are chanting, you're trying to focus. Why does it go everywhere? And then you try to no, just listen.
Because you're conditioned. So you have to. One of the things that happens, which will really help your bhakti, is you go, okay, this is where I am in this life. And once you accept that, then you start, because you go, now I know how much work I'm going to do. It's like, if you occasionally go to the gym, but you don't have a fitness trainer, right? You don't really know how fit you are. And if one day you get one, and you start after 10 minutes, and you go, oh, my workouts weren't very good. I'm not actually that fit. Kind of an eye-opening moment, right? Then you can go, then you've got a choice. I either can do the work or I don't do the work, right? So this information is hugely valuable, the mind and the intelligence. Oh, my mind is going, my mind's going there. But as you get more mature, you go, that means I should chant more deeply. That means I'm more purified. I need to work harder on my bhakti, right? You've got a choice, give up, go less, or go more, right? But if you're humble and sincere and you want to get to Krishna, you're going to, I didn't do this early on, I was like, oh, I can't do that. My mind's all over the place, but you know, I give up for a few weeks when I was in my 20s, and then you'd come back to the temple and start all over again, and go back and do something naughty again, you know. But over time, what will happen is the sincerity will come through, and you'll go, I don't want to do this anymore. You're like, look, if I put an amazing chocolate bar in front of you, and I said, I'll give you $1 million to eat it, and you haven't eaten for 2 days, you might say, I don't want it even if I'm really hungry. Because I've incentivized you. So you have to incentivize yourself with intelligence. I want to get out of this material world. You've got to be able to win that battle in your head. And if you can't win initially, like in anything in life, you have to have the resilience to keep coming back. Right? And if you can't do that, you have to ask the one person that controls the material world, Krishna. Say, Krishna, give me the energy to keep chanting. Like I sometimes have the days when I chant in the morning and go, Krishna, I cannot believe your love for me, you're still making me chant. You allow me to chant. I'm just an idiot, I'd stop in 2 minutes. I'd watch a film. You know? But somehow over years and years I managed to keep doing it. That's Krishna's mercy, you know. Understanding that I can't do it on my own. And the best thing is to ask for help. That acceptance is why I need help, I need input, I need to text somebody. Text me or text, people text me about Bhakti all the time. How do I do this, how do I do that? You know? Why don't you try this, why don't you try that? Get help, there's loads of people to help. You know, and you develop other relationships, other devotees, other temples, and, you know, travel around a bit, go to another temple in New Zealand or somewhere, I don't know, you know. Get different inputs. If you're really serious about getting out of here, you know, about the spiritual world, you know, if you're really, really serious, you'll do anything it takes to get out of there. Nothing's going to stop you.
Kirtan Adelaide. Leave a like and subscribe.